So Malachi is selling pens and mechanical pencils. He's selling pens for $1.50 and mechanical pencils for $1.95. He apparently has sold a total of 95 items and has collected $171.75. Find the number of pens and mechanical pencils that Malachi has sold. So we'll start by writing a let statement here, and I'm going to go ahead and use X and Y for this. I'm going to say let X equal the number of pens sold. So it's not their value, it's how many of them. And I'm going to say let Y, let L-E-T, Y equal the number of pencils sold. So I'll refer to that towards the end if I want to make sure I write down the final, the correct summary values. So let's write our system of equations. So one of the things I know is that there are a total of 95 items that was sold. So in other words, if I take the number of pens, X, plus the number of pencils, Y, I get that there were 95 of them sold. That's one equation. The other equation I have is that each of the pens sold for $1.50 and each of the pencils sold for $1.95. So the amount of money generated by the pens is $1.50 times X. So this is how much revenue is generated from the pencils, plus the amount of money generated from the pens. I'm sorry, the pens was $1.50. So that's the 1.5x is the amount of money generated by the sale of pens. $1.95 is what the mechanical pencils cost. They were the more expensive item. So $1.95 times Y is how much money was generated from the mechanical pencils. And together, if I go back up and look at it, that was $171.75. So this is the system of equations I have. And I guess there's a lot of ways that we could solve this system. I could go elimination, I could go substitution. I'm going to pick substitution here. So I'm going to take this first equation, I'm going to say, hey, X has to be the opposite of Y plus 95. And in this second equation, I'm going to choose to multiply both sides of it by 100. And the reason why I'm doing that is just to get rid of the decimals. This is totally not necessary, but this would become 150x plus 195y, and that would equal 17,175. So I don't know if that's easier or if it makes it more difficult, but it is what it is. So if I use substitution, I know that the opposite of y plus 95 is equivalent to x. So I'm going to plug that in for x into this equation that I just wrote here. So I have 150 times the opposite of y plus 95, and then plus 195 times y, and that equals 17,175. So again, I just replaced x with the value of x I found from solving the first equation for x. And now we're just going to solve, there's only the one variable y here, so we're going to go ahead and solve that. So I'm looking at, this is messier than I thought it would be. This is going to be a negative 150 y, and then plus I need 95 times 150. So, oops, let me quit that. 95 times 150. That gives me 14,250. So plus 14,250, and then plus 195y, and that equals 17,175. So if I combine my y's, I've got a negative 150 and a positive 195. I'm just going to take the 195 and subtract 150 from that. Okay, so I've got 45y on this side. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 14,250 from each side. So 45y equals, let's take the 17,175 and subtract 14,250. And when I do that, I get 29,025. And I'm going to divide both sides by 45 now. So when I do that, I get y is going to be 65. And in this problem, I think I said that y was the number of, oops, let me get this calculator out of the way. Y was the number of pencils sold. So I believe this is the correct value for the number of mechanical pencils. But before I write it in the blank over there, I want to find x and check it. In order to find x, right, I'm just going to take the opposite of that y and add 95. Or they just have to add up to 95. So I'm just going to take 95 and subtract the 65. And it gives me that x has to equal 30. So I believe that my answer is the number of pencils was 65 and the number of pens was 30. So verifying that answer, I'm just going to go ahead and quickly, and this is goofy because I know they add up to 95, but 30 plus 65 is definitely 95. And the other thing that I need to check is that the cash works out. So I'm looking at this equation as I check it. So I'm going to take x was 30. So I'm going to take $1.50 times 30 of the pens plus $1.95, and I think it was times 65 of the mechanical pencils, and this should be 17,000. I'm sorry, with decimals in the wrong spot. It should be $171.75, and it is. So because both of these equations check out, right, I am positive that this is my solution. Again, the number of pens sold was 65 pens, and the let's see, because x, oh no, x is the number. See, this is why it's important to have a let statement, right? Because I've got x and I'm like, what are they? So x is the number of pens sold, and I can see that was 30. So my number of pens was 30, and y is the number of pencils sold. So for y, I'm going to place the number 65. So 30 pens and 65 pencils.